Today on America's Test Kitchen, Dan uncovers the secrets to the best chicken stew. Adam reviews baking pans in the equipment corner. And Bridget cooks the ultimate cream cheese brownies. Right here on America's Test Kitchen.
You know, we've been doing this a long time here in the Test Kitchen, and we know what you do at home. Sometimes you love to substitute ingredients. Now, take a classic beef stew. The beef is slow cooked, it's tender and juicy, has a rich, silky flavor in the sauce. And sometimes you have no beef, so what do? You substitute chicken, and you get a dry chicken. It's shredded, has no flavor whatsoever, and the sauce is thin and watery. So we're going to go into the Test Kitchen with Dan, and we're going to substitute chicken for beef in a beef stew, but we're going to find out the right way to do it. There are many things about this place and this job that I love, but the thing I love most is finding out how folks at home really cook. So today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to take beef stew, but throw in chicken instead of beef, which sounds insane, but we asked you to figure it out.
Because beef is really designed for stew, right? You cut it into small pieces, you can sear it really hard, cook it for a long time, and you end up with a really nice gravy. Chicken, not quite so much. So we're going to do a lot of things today to build flavor and to develop a lot of good browning that's going to add some richness to this. So the first thing I'm going to start with is 3 slices of bacon, which I've chopped up. Most good things start with bacon. This stew is not an exception to that. So I'm just going to put this over medium-low heat. I want to render out the fat, which we're going to use to cook some more things and get some more flavor with the browning of the bacon. Now it's onto the chicken, and I'm actually going to use 2 different cuts of chicken for this because no one cut really does the same thing as beef. So the first one I'm going to start with is boneless, skinless thighs, which I've cut in half crosswise. I'm going to just kind of put these out on the sheet here, spread them out, and this is 2 pounds of chicken. So what I'm going to do is salt them ahead of time and give them a little bit more protection against overcooking. And we actually got a little pepper as well, and I'm going to get both sides. All right, great. So I'm just going to have you set these aside over there, and we're going to let them sit while we build the rest of our stew. So give that salt some time to work. Okay, so Chris, now we've rendered out lots of fat. You can see, and the bacon's nice and brown. We're going to get the bacon out at this point. And I'm using a slotted spoon here, and I'm just going to transfer it to this large bowl over here. And one more little piece there. All right, great. So we've got some nice browning on the bottom, and we've got our fat there. That leads us into our next cut of chicken. And so it's actually 1 pound of chicken wings. Now chicken wings, even on modern birds, have a fair amount of connective tissue to them. They've got a lot of skin, which has collagen, which breaks down into gelatin. We're actually not going to treat these very gently because we're going to remove them at the very end. So we're going to try and get everything we can out of them. The first thing we're going to do is brown them. So in this rendered bacon fat here, for medium heat, and I'm going to add my wings. So when you buy the wings, sometimes, Chris, they're connected. You want to cut through that joint so that they lay flat. Otherwise, they'll kind of be sticking up in different directions. We're going to brown these on both sides, which will take about 7 to 10 minutes. We've got some really nice browning going on these wings. They smell awesome. I'm just going to pop them in the bowl with our bacon. We'll get good browning on both sides. Okay, so now we've got more fat in here from the skin, so we're going to use that to cook our aromatics. This is 1 onion that I just chopped up. I've got that celery rib. I've got 2 cloves of minced garlic. And
anchovy!
Some anchovy paste, exactly. Anchovy paste is going to provide a lot of nice meatiness. It's not going to taste like fish, really. And I'm also adding a teaspoon of fresh thyme. So I'm going to give this a good stir. And we're going to cook this until we get a really nice fond on the bottom of the pan. It's been about 3 minutes, and you can see that I'm starting to get more fond again on the bottom there. And I'm going to deglaze now. So I'm starting with a cup of chicken broth. And we've got a cup of white wine and a tablespoon of soy sauce. So I mentioned adding that anchovy paste earlier. It actually contains what we call free nucleotides that go in and actually change those taste receptors on your tongue. So when you add something that is really rich in glutamates like soy sauce, it actually, you taste it more. So there's some synergy going on there as well. So I'm going to scrape up what's on the bottom, incorporate it into the stew, and we're going to cook it down until it's really dry and you start to hear those vegetables sizzle again. And that's going to take anywhere from 12 to 15 minutes. Okay, so Chris, I'm really excited about this. We've reduced it down and we're starting to get browning again, which is great. So now I'm going to add some butter. We're going to need to thicken this up, and I'm going to make a roux in the pot here. So this is 3 tablespoons of butter. Just going to stir around and melt real quickly here. So now that that butter is in there and melted, I'm going to sprinkle on 1/3 cup of flour. We tried various ways of thickening this, but we actually really like the classic roux. It gives a nice body, and you actually get flavor from the toasted flour as well. So I'm just stirring this around, make sure that all that flour is coated in fat, so that when I add my liquid, it's not going to clump up.
Yeah, the classic roux also doesn't break. It doesn't get slimy. No matter what you do to it, it holds.
It's true. Okay, so now that I've coated that in fat, I'm going to whisk in the remaining part of my liquid, which is 4 cups of chicken broth. I'm going to do this gradually, which is going to be easier to break up the roux. You have less liquid in there. All right, so now that it's looser, I can keep adding a little faster and get it to rest right in there. I've whisked it, but I'm also going to go through with my wooden spoon and just make sure I don't have any stuff stuck to the bottom. So if you leave flour stuck to the bottom at this point, it can have a tendency to burn. And I'm going to add some vegetables. This isn't just going to be chicken, I promise. There's a few vegetables. So I've got a pound of red potatoes, which I've left unpeeled and quartered, and 4 carrots, which I peeled and cut into half-inch pieces. So Chris, now that that's all mixed in there, it's time to go into the oven. And I'm actually going to cook this in a 325-degree oven uncovered. Because we dry out the surface a bit, we get browning on top as opposed to just steaming inside.
Here's a quick tip for quickly defrosting meat. Most people take it from the freezer to the fridge either overnight or for hours. Until recently, we had a faster method, which was to put the chicken or the chop directly on a cast iron pan or other heavy metal surface. The metal conducts heat very quickly and warms it up in about an hour. But here's a faster way to do it. We took chicken breasts, boneless, skinless chicken breasts. They're from the freezer. They were wrapped in a Ziploc bag. And then we have a bowl of water that's around 140 degrees. You can do this with a steak or a veal chop or pork chop. Put it in the water. And we found this defrosted the chicken in about 8 minutes. The steaks and chops took about 12 minutes. By the way, when the chicken comes out, it's slightly opaque, but after cooking, it looks just fine. So there you have it, another great quick tip from America's Test Kitchen.
Okay, so Chris, this has been cooking for about 30 minutes. Starting to smell good. You can see what I was talking about, how it's dried on the surface and we've gotten some color. Now, I'm gonna add my chicken thighs, but before I do that, I wanna point out one other thing. See this ring around here? That's sauce that's come up onto the side, and then all that moisture's evaporated and it started to brown again. So you're getting even more meatiness. Now, a lot of people would end up just kind of scrubbing that off afterwards in the sink, but we're not gonna do it now so we get it in our stew.
That's a good idea.
The technique is really simple. You just pull up some broth around the side, and then once it's moistened, it's gonna be a lot easier. Just simply scrape it in. And this is a technique, Chris, you can use with anything you cook uncovered. Okay, so now I'm gonna add my thighs. I'm actually gonna put it over high heat here so that we don't drop the temperature too much and we don't waste a lot of time in the oven bringing it back up. So you notice I haven't browned these at all. I haven't seared them. And I'm not gonna cook them for a very long time because I want them to be really tender. Just cook through, because these are the nice meaty bites that we're gonna get in our stew. So just stir these in, make sure they're all nice and covered. And we're still at a nice simmer, so that's good. Turn that off, and I'm gonna go back in the oven. Okay, so Chris, that's been 45 minutes, and everything is nice and tender. So I'm gonna pull this out. That smells good. Now, Chris, this is the stew that we've been cooking.
And this is the one I made.
This is the one that you made. So this is for comparison where nothing has been browned. This is gonna be, okay chicken flavor, but it's really it's like chicken soup. It's very, very mild in flavor, whereas this has all that nice browning involved. You can see a color difference. What I'm actually gonna do is just a little bit more of that scraping. You can see that I've got more fond up here, so I'm just scraping up that liquid. Okay, so Chris, now I need to remove my chicken wings. We've really pulled everything we could out of them, and you'll see that they're pretty much falling apart. So that means all the collagen's broken down into gelatin, and if you taste the meat, it doesn't really taste like very much. Okay, so I got them all out. Set these aside. Now, all along, Chris, we've been really trying to develop flavor and really depth of flavor and richness. Now I'm going to balance that with some acidity and brightness in the form of a couple tablespoons of fresh white wine. It needs a tiny bit of salt, and I'm going to get a bunch of pepper in there. Stir that in, and I'm going to give it one more taste just to make sure we got it. Perfect. That's great. Finally, I'm going to finish with a couple tablespoons of chopped parsley. Add some nice color and some nice brightness to it. Okay, Chris, we can finally taste it.
You mean I can finally taste it? You've already tasted it.
All right. So
It does, I have to say, it does look meaty. Oof. Also, the broth really naps it. It's more of a sauce, like a real stew. Well, A for looks.
I get that a lot.
F for modesty. It reminds me of cassoulet almost. It has that really rich flavor. I'd say it's meatier than beef stew. So the secret to a great chicken stew along the lines of a great beef stew was, of course, to use chicken. We used chicken wings and bacon to add flavor, and then some anchovies and soy sauce. You made some of the sauce and reduced it way down for more concentrated flavor, then added the rest of the stock. And the chicken came in really at the last minute. So there you have it. From America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen, a fabulous version of our very best chicken stew. It's stewier and meatier than beef stew. Over the years here in the Test Kitchen, we've tested a lot of baking pans. We love Pyrex, although it's not broiler safe. HIC does make a porcelain pan, 9x12, which is broiler safe for casseroles. But when it comes to baking bar cookies, brownies, maybe one-layer sheet cakes, you want a metal pan with straight sides. And that's why I'm here today with Adam.
That is the subject of this testing, Chris. We have 8 different 9x13 metal baking pans. The price range was about $10 to $33. We also had 2 innovative designs. This one has a removable bottom, just like a classic tart pan does. And this one is sort of a food service pan. It's not really a pan at all. It's a 9x13 frame that fits into a standard quarter sheet pan. So our tests included brownies, cornbread, and sticky buns. The brownies overbaked a little bit in this dark finished pan. Our next test was cornbread, and we had the reverse phenomenon going on there. The lighter pans with the cornbread kind of underbrowned the crust sometimes, whereas the medium tone pans like these two browned the crust to a much darker shade, which looks better and tastes better. The last test was these sticky buns, and these are a challenge for any pan because they have a very sugary caramel glaze at the bottom. If you didn't have a non-stick pan for these sticky buns, you were sunk because
Hence they're called sticky buns.
They're called sticky buns for a reason. We also had disastrous results with these 2 innovative designs. They leaked like crazy in the oven. It was a nightmare. In terms of how these baked, why don't you give those a feel? These came out of the really dark pan here. Anyone home?
Knock, knock.
That is supposed to be a supple caramel glaze. And what we got, because it overbaked, because it absorbed too much heat, is a hard caramel candy.
It's an all seasons finish.
That is all wrong.
Okay.
Whereas this medium tone pan did a beautiful job. We got exactly what we were looking for. The buns cooked correctly. Sticky. The glaze was beautiful. It was nice and supple. We also did some abuse testing. You're not supposed to use metal utensils on a nonstick pan. Everybody knows that, and everybody does it anyway. Interestingly, this one did a great job concealing the scratches. This is a medium tone pan with a corrugated bottom. The corrugated surface really helped mitigate the scratching here. This one, the medium tone one that's doing such a good job baking for us, did get some scratches in it, but none of the coating flaked off. This very soft aluminum pan, that really got scratched up in the abuse tests. So in the end, this was actually the one that we liked the best. This is the Williams-Sonoma Gold Touch rectangular cake pan. It was the most expensive one here at $33, so it's not a cheap pan, but if you're going to put the effort into making sticky buns from scratch or brownies, whatever you're baking, you really want it to come out as best as it can, and this pan will help ensure that. If $33 is too much to spend, which I don't necessarily think it is, this one was a good runner-up. This is the USA rectangular cake pan. It's the one with that corrugated surface that left a little impression on the top of the sticky buns that some testers objected to. I didn't really mind them that much. But it was $20. And it released all the food well. It browned things to a nice degree. It did a good job. So it's a good alternative to this more expensive pan.
So I know I'm cheap, but $33 sounds more than a fair price for a lifetime. So the winner was Williams-Sonoma Gold Touch Non-Stick Baking Pan. The first brownie recipe was published